We need 1 second. I'll just keep coming at you. How's that? Good to go. All right. Well, first, thanks for joining us. Keystone Merge, this is a regional gathering of thinkers and doers. First Thursday of every month, rotating between York, Harrisburg, and Lancaster. So if this is your first time, we expect to see you at other ones. Crossing rivers is not that far. We can get to York. We can get to Harrisburg. Big thank you to our community partners who support this event and make it all happen. The full list is on the website, so if you have a moment, take a look and appreciate all the work that all the partners do to put this together. The funding for this event is from the Next Gen Partnership Innovation Committee. I'm actually part of that committee, and I will say my counterpart, Alexa Bourne, who heads up the committee with me, she's on vacation, so that's why I'm here today to give the little speech. As you know, we're here to learn about great new things people are creating in our community and to provide some real-time support to entrepreneurs. And we've got two good ones tonight. So you'll hear from them. They'll present 10 minutes, and then we'll have about 10 minutes to discuss and offer help to the challenges that they've identified. Please eat and drink. Big thank you to our caterer, Scratch Bake from Lancaster. All that food and all that beer is not going to eat and drink itself. So you have to get out there and eat it. So first, let's welcome Andrew Smith. Andrew from Visual Realia, LLC. So Andy, the show's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. It was a rather last minute idea to be here. Somebody else was originally lined up, and we had a email coming from Helen saying, basically, help! That there was a new opening, and I was glad to step in. I live in Hanover, but I'm connected to the grotto. I'm certain that as entrepreneurs and business folks that you don't need a lot of background into how crazy these past few years have been. Certainly in retail and other areas, COVID just really slammed everybody. Out of curiosity, how many folks in the room think that their business was impacted by COVID-19? Yeah, that's what we all expected, right? And I'm going to be talking about how that impacted a slightly different area of business. At the extreme end, just as a reminder, in 2020, we had twice as many retail bankruptcies as just 1 year earlier. So the degree of change was just huge. Gentleman named Tony Boncour, I think summed it up as well as anybody I've run across. He was asked about the biggest change, long-term impacts of that time period. And he said, in a word, what do we think? I'm curious from you guys, was it economy, supply chain? Anybody want to venture to guess what he or what you might think was the biggest change? Culture? Yeah, there's a lot of good things. What he went for was the consumers themselves. And I tend to agree with him. Sorry here. So he believes the consumers themselves were the change. Consumer behavior was certainly shifting before COVID-19, but the widespread shutdown of brick and mortar stores moved everything online. And as that happened, people have the new ingrained customer behavior, and that new customer behavior has moved across all demographics. Now, why I'm bringing this up for me, I was a 32-year middle school band director for most of my career. Here's a picture of the band when I started 32 years ago. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's not accurate. This is more like it. And as I was getting close to my retirement, I started to think about what I might want to do, moving forward. I always had a long-term interest in photography and did some semi-serious photography in art. Certainly had art in different small galleries around, particularly in York County. So I started thinking about that as I got closer. And I have a LLC, Visual Realia LLC. Realia is anything that you can touch, hold, a real thing that's typically used in teaching. So the title kind of ties my interests together. So the visual part, visual artist, and the Realia part is bringing in the educational ends of things. I kind of shifted. Randomly, I ran across an unusual art form invented by this guy named Mitch Lyons from southeastern Pennsylvania, who came up with a new printing method. But instead of printing with paint or ink, he prints with clay. And the finished project, you can see one example on here, the clay actually clings to the canvas itself. So very unusual process, and it's really just a fascinating process that I'm happy to talk about sometime, but we'll focus more on the business end today. Just some more steps involved there. Now, as I did reach retirement, I was president of our local art guild right as COVID hit, which was an interesting thing. It was a nonprofit. And if you've ever been involved in a nonprofit board, once you're involved in a nonprofit board, you will be involved in a lot of nonprofit boards if people have their way. So right now I'm on 4 different boards, which is too much, but I'm on 4 different ones. Just looking around real quickly, I'm on the board for Hanover's Public Library, the Guthrie Library, which is the second most visited library in York County, second only to the Martin Library in downtown York. And as the Martin Library was being renovated, actually for a time Hanover was the most visited. So a rather large facility, wonderful staff, just a wonderful thing. Moving on, I'm on the board for the Adams County Farmers Market. What's really cool about this is it is a nonprofit. They work with really large government grants and big business grants. WellSpan gives them money. And they double SNAP funds and some of the retirement programs for people in the area. So if you go to the market, if you're a SNAP recipient, and you say, hey, I want to spend $20 of my SNAP money, they have a machine, it looks like a credit card machine, so they're taking $20, but they give you $40 of tokens that you can spend at market. And what's remarkable about this is it doesn't just help that person, but this is 40 real dollars. So that now instead of $20 going to the farmer, now the farmer gets $40. So it's putting that money right back into the economy. So really cool programs. I am on the board for the Grotto right now, and the Grotto reaches out to the arts community in many different ways, as you probably know from being there. And then the bottom right, this is a new nonprofit. I would like to say we're patiently waiting for the official nonprofit status, but for those of you involved in new nonprofits, patiently does change to impatiently. But I do want to mention this one because it has a neat connection to you guys right here. It's Ophelia's making agency. Ophelia Chambliss in April of last year spoke to Keystone Merge. And at that point, she mentioned just this very first steps of the idea she had in her head, where she wanted to find a way, through a nonprofit, to help new entrepreneurs and new artistic creators, specifically in the minority community. And we have a facility now, so a little bit more than a year later, and I'm happy to say that Powder Mill Foundation just gave us $30,000 to start working on the second floor to help make small studios for artists. And the idea would be that these studios would be below market price. So we're excited to be on our way for that. I just mention all four of those things involve, you can just look at the picture, you can see people, and they're all tied to culture. Somebody mentioned culture earlier. So I have a big love of anything arts related. And moving on, just some other things I'm involved in. Cultural Alliance gave me a grant to start an online magazine called Culture on the Line. We have a program through Cultural Alliance where we help new artists and creators get grants, small grants up to $2,000. Your people applying for these are matched with somebody who helps them walk through the process. We have a group called Collective Rogue Artists that tries to make opportunities, both social and exhibiting opportunities for artists. And then I just was given the opportunity in Hanover. There's a 1913 old post office that I'm now curating exhibits in, and that's kind of cool because as you can imagine, the architecture is pretty impressive. For those of you from York, the old York post office was probably done by the same architect as Hanover's, just on a smaller scale. So bringing what we started with here, those retail challenges, the same thing has hit arts, both on a local level, national level, and internationally. Some quick figures. The Louvre is still down 20% of visitation from pre-COVID. The Vatican Museum's visitation is down 26%, and London's Tate Museum is down 36%. Looking locally, the Philadelphia Inquirer, just last week, it was perfect timing, they had an article about the issues that we're having in our basic region. Here on the East Coast, the National Gallery of Art in DC, attendance is down 20%. The Met is down still 50% attendance-wise. And you can imagine how that's impacting our artists. In Philadelphia, the Walnut Street Theater, which is considered one of the United States' first oldest theaters, they've moved down from 35,000 subscribers to 18,000. For this article, they polled Philadelphia region's arts and culture, their groups, and they think only 1/3 of groups in this greater Philadelphia area, only 1/3 of them are back to visitation and attendance numbers from before. Somebody from the Philadelphia Theater Company, when asked about getting those people back, they felt that a lot of those people aren't going to be coming back. At the beginning in retail, we mentioned how it's really now ingrained in how we approach things that we aren't going out as often. Even just talking to friends, you may have found the case too. You may have friends that aren't going out to eat as often as they were before. I had somebody say, about going to the bar. They just stay home and drink their beer at home, mix their cocktails at home. So that cultural shift not only is hitting people in terms of retail, but it's impacting our artists as well. Now, they felt that the key is finding new audiences. I would change that a little bit and say that somehow we have to figure out how to create new audiences. And that's going to be a challenge, but it's something that we're facing. In retail, if you're somebody that's selling something, it doesn't matter to you necessarily whether somebody buys your product in a store or online, but that's a little bit different for artists. Artists want you to see their work. Even online, if people are seeing it, imagine you're that artist who has spent 4 months painting something 4 feet by 3 feet. And now the people looking at your art are seeing it on this. So artists need people to come and see their works. Those musicians, streaming is great to listen, but those musicians still want somebody in the audience when they're performing. social media and online access it's tended to be a double-edged sword. Certainly it's made things a lot easier to let people know about what you're doing. So if your band is performing, you can put a post on. If you have an art exhibit this Sunday, I can let people know. So that's great. But I think the other edge of that is if I put online that my exhibit is opening Sunday, my friends, what they'll do is they'll hit that like button, and that's just created a psychological thing where, oh, I've just supported him. I've given them that thumbs up. And they don't necessarily then go and participate in your art. So that's something I'd just like to have you keep in mind moving forward. It's going to continue to be a challenge as we try to go through this new landscape. A vast majority of survey responders said that they still want to see and touch and feel and smell if it's cooking. They want to participate in culture, but they're not yet doing that. They're still staying home. So the problem that I bring forth is how do we move people from their couch to inside that art exhibit? Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, now we have the questions, comments. I know I'm supposed to be giving the microphone. I apologize. So if you have any questions or comments, now is the time to speak up. And before the first question, I was remiss. Facilities in the back of the room to the right. You don't have to go down to the first floor.
Sure.
I think working? No. Okay.
Yeah, it's just for
Okay.
streaming.
All right. I didn't hear it. Okay. I totally agree that our consumer change their behavior, how they purchase, how they go out, and so on and so, including myself as well. Totally agree. As an entrepreneur, we only can capture and adopt the changes.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how good our product is, if that's the customer not what meet their behavior, their needs, we cannot change and pull them back. Hey, let's go back to museums, so on and so. I think we need to adopt instead trying to pull them back. So I think teasing will be like a lot better way of someone talking about painting, like a live way. And if you want to, you cannot touch a painting, but you can touch a clothes, some other
Right.
stuff. But when someone talk about this is huge difference, explain, okay, this is you look on the TV or on the phone. Now I'm in person and talk about the differences. If someone watch that on Facebook, I will say, encourage them to actually stop by museum. That's kind of solving one problem, but
Right.
yeah. But another thing is we should follow the behavior of what our customer currently are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just my thought.
No, I agree that to some degree we have to do that. That really changes, in a sense, of the whole philosophy of what an artist does. A lot of our artists want to create and share that work, and that's made much more challenging. We have to figure out how we're going to get that work in front of people when they're not coming our direction. But you're right. I mean, it's a reality we have to face.
Yeah. I think when they're creating arts, for example, they're creating specific piece, artists actually can be influencers in that way, that you're doing this painting live, having your audience every day, you're doing this, and talk to your audience, hey, what you
Right.
want to do that. So art's more like, in artist history, you got the magic pen, or paint, or brush, right? But now maybe you can change the way that you used to because of customer behavior. So people actually get involved. Okay, I think I need to add this a little bit. So you more like have people decide what you're going to paint.
Participatory art,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, and that's, I think, no matter what business nowadays is getting people more involved, that is the trend.
Yeah, and marketing, certainly some artists are able to do that. Marketing where you show your steps. You may have videos along the way of your project. Yeah, that's certainly something people can use that.
Yeah, right.
That
And
method.
if in that case it really works, then people will draw, okay, actually I buy this piece. So audience and buyers all in one basket.
Thank you.
I just wonder what you think the relationship between artists and entrepreneurs looks like, because as an artist myself who dabbled in entrepreneurship and decided that I would rather be an artist, I think that sometimes it can be hard for artists to pursue the realistic side, especially in our culture where you monetize everything versus in previous times when people would have more of, you would know the actual terminology, but when someone supports your art financially because they're fans. But yes, like patrons. So I guess, is it realistic to expect artists to be responsible for this task while also staying true to the authenticity of their work? Or is it more realistic to create partnerships between entrepreneurs or organizations and let most of the weight be on them?
Yeah, and it's a good question, and I don't think there's an answer for everybody. And by the way, I'm going to just say something that when Helen said she dabbled in entrepreneurship, Helen didn't dabble. But I'm a big fan of Helen. She does some amazing things. But yeah, and one of the big issues is a lot of artists aren't necessarily extroverts. Not necessarily a laugh from the back. Aren't necessarily people who want to talk in front of an audience, want to be filming their every steps. Art is so personal that, putting that camera on as you're working on it, that really can change the process. So it's one of those things we talked about that some people are doing that successfully, but it's going to be tough. And art too it can be a long thing. So, realistically, some of these paintings people are doing, even at a local level, they don't have to be the world's best artists. People are working with artworks for months at a time. So how do we capture that on video? We can't really be capturing, 10 months on video. So there's that real balance. What do we show? How do we market? And I think is what you're alluding to is it's even just marketing itself will change, in some cases, will potentially change the art because of how personal it is. I don't know if that's touching on what you're getting at all or not.
Yeah, and I think also too that it's a interesting time because a lot of artists are probably fed up with the solutions that were presented to them by marketing agencies because
Right.
it doesn't represent the depth of their work. So I do think it's like a good time for people to jump in if they're more interested in something like what you and Lily have mentioned of like an in-depth type of representation instead of just here's 30 days of marketing, because
Right.
at the end of the day, like an artist will probably jump off a bridge if it's not fully
Yeah.
representative
And-
of their work.
And I maybe touched on it a tiny bit. There's really two parts for an artist. There's the part that I want to sell my work. I need to sell my work. But there is also that bit about I want to show my work. I don't want my work just to be seen by one person that buys it. So I can put my work online to sell, and that's great if somebody buys my work. Well, potentially one person has seen it. The model of let's have an exhibit and people showing up to see that exhibit. You get feedback from a whole bunch of people. So many more people are seeing it. And if they're not showing up and you have to fight for that, that's really tough. And I'm not pretending that there's easy answers. Now, you did mention partnerships. That may need to be something that happens is, nonprofits may need to support artists in that way. And a lot of our groups around are that model. In York, we have Creative York. Hanover has an art guild, which is a nonprofit. So that's financial support in a way. We still have to fight that getting people in. It's tough. I came here not pretending there's an easy answer. Really, my thought is at the ground level, those of us who are aware of it need to make that change. I mean, it seems small, but if you have an opportunity, your friend is in a performing group, just don't say, hey, awesome, I'll stay home and you have a good time. An exhibit, working with an exhibit that's open in Sunday, show up. Take a half an hour and show up. And even artists are awful at that. Artists, we don't necessarily show up for other artists, but I really think part of it is just making that. We mentioned an ingrained behavior shift. If we made a ingrained behavior shift to not going places, we can make a shift back. It's possible. It's not going to be fast.
So, kind of to build upon the partnership idea, it's happened across the board.
Yeah.
So even with music, we're musicians, and I'm an artist as well. And so it's about building community, and it's about all of us talking to our friends and growing our networks and encouraging people to come out at the end of the day. I mean, very similar to co-working. We say we save you from isolation. That's why we exist, right? It's about drawing people out of their homes. Isolation's not good, right? And it's the same thing. It's operating in the same way, right? People are choosing to not be enriched by arts and music in a way that they were in the past, but yet they'll all go to a Taylor Swift concert, right? So people have the resources to do these if they choose. So I think it's really important that we, on a smaller scale, build community around the arts, around music, and really pay attention to what's happening locally. There's so much amazing stuff happening locally. So it's about getting some people to really ignite the energy around that. And not operate in silos, which we tend to do, right? And musicians are horrible at that. We will, they'll kind of operate over here or operate over here, but not necessarily together on a local level. So we're seeing more and more community forming out of the need to build these relationships, to encourage people to come out. But I think it really is going to require all of us to really push people to come back out. I mean, it takes 21 days really to build a new habit. We had 3 years. So, I mean, it's going to take a little bit of time to rebuild and regain that. But I think it all comes down to community and hyper-local. And, so those relationships are key, right?
And it's a conscious effort. We have to work at it and say, I know my friend has this exhibit. I know my friend is playing. I could stay home, but I really need to do this.
And bring another friend.
Right.
And then bring another friend and invite that friend and make a web and make collectives like there used to be, right? So there used to be more art collectives. There used to be more music collectives. And these people worked together and grew the audience. It's like if my friend's a musician and I'm a musician and we're both collectively working together to build each other up, then we're going to be more successful. But if you're just operating in a silo, it's not going to work. So I think that the idea of co-ops, collectives, these gathering spaces, these third spaces that not only provide places to come gather and be social, but also to be able to exhibit work and to bring new people to the table. So these kind of places like co-working spaces and co-ops and things like that are super essential, I think, to this new landscape that we have.
It's going to be interesting.
I would like to add another lens to the conversation. Looking at the businesses who were impacted by COVID, but in a positive way. I would bet money that a lot of those businesses were Black owned or Latino owned. And so then the question is like, well, what's race have to do with it, right? Why was that an actual result of the other multiple factors, right? And I think that to your point, well, my perspective, I'm a fan of like disruption, right? So whatever it was, burn it to the ground, right? Like let's reimagine an art show because my artist friends couldn't get into those shows. They could not put their artwork on the walls. They were not welcomed. We the programs don't reflect the art mediums that other communities, the non-dominant cultures communities express, right? It wasn't art, right? I recently had a falling out with the Art Association of Harrisburg around this topic, about the need to create programming that reflects the community, right? If we're thinking hyper local, knowing who those people are is important, and we can't ignore the fact that race has something to do with it, right? So,
Absolutely.
I would lean into that. Anyone who's trying to heighten or like revive some sort of in-person experiences, I would suggest leaning into partnerships that have always been left out, and communities that have often been left out, and I bet you would see numbers peak.
And I agree that there was a quote you might not have remembered about looking for new artists, and I mentioned that I would change it to create new audiences, and I think that's a lot of what we're looking at here. You know, to your point, for a lot of arts organizations, the people who went to things were typically older and white. So, if people are looking for new audiences, we can't just continue looking for older white me. The audiences need to expand, and the participating artists we need to let that expand.
I think what we talk about in here definitely makes sense as a Asian and some culture that we are more family orientated. So you introduce a art show into one person, that meaning cousins, second cousins, and third cousins. Right? So just say that. So I think a certain you know people that races, then will be helpful for audience.
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to say that.
Andy, you said the idea that co-working and places like that's going to be essential to this change. That just hit it. Like, I think if I'm thinking about, challenges in this space, I would think the answer, or one of the answers, part of the answer is public spaces to put on a show. Because if I'm a musician, I got to get into a bar, I got to get into a club, I got to do something, right? I need an agent, I need somebody. But if there's public spaces where we can just do this stuff, where our audience can come and see us or find us, that seems like the answer or the beginning of it. If we're talking about how to change this, how to create a new ingrained behavior, sounds like leadership in that space. Which, Ann, you're obviously a leader in that space, but more public spaces, more co-working, more places where artists, musicians, people can just put on shows without being restricted. Because that then also touches on the idea, if there is any racism in the established industry, then free public space is the answer.
Yeah, I think venue expansion is going to happen. The Grotto certainly has been doing shows. I had mentioned I have access to an old 1913 post office that's it's been converted into business offices. We're going to have to do more things like that where it's in front of people. So somebody coming in is going to see that art. They're not necessarily always arriving for the art, but they will see it. all these things we're talking about, they're all right. There's not going to be one small answer. Obviously, it's going to continue to be a challenge.
Let's have one more question, and then we can move on to the entrepreneur number two. So,
Yeah, I love this input. I mean, this is like all great, and I don't think I'm like qualified to give advice. More of like an observation. Like I sell software, so like I play the guitar and I love instruments and stuff like that. But like one thing that I have observed, especially like in like the film industry and like in the music industry, is how like like you mentioned, the consumer has changed, and like I think COVID accelerated that. It was just like it was heading in this direction. Something happened. It was like, wow, that just accelerated it like 5 years. And like one thing, so like I was born in the 90s, but like there's some great movies in the 80s that some of my coworkers was like, oh, you've never watched this movie. Like, and so my wife and I have like gone back and like watched those movies, and I was able to enjoy them for like what they were, but I realized how different of a style and a pace that movies in the 80s were filmed versus like the Marvel movies like coming out now. Like the action pack, like our attention span as a culture has just like shrinked, and it's like it's unfortunate because it's like for artists it's like all right, it takes a different style to maybe capture an audience, but like I see that like in the music industry too, like how music artists pop now, independent artists anyway, is like just like releasing, like I've seen some artists like on TikTok and Instagram, they're releasing a song a week. Mm-hmm. Like, and it's just like, all right, they've been willing to, what I see some people have been willing to do in the music industry is like put out maybe imperfection for the rate of like, hey, like really it's like people want to be entertained, and like the way we're entertained is also like through this device often first. And then like, that's usually how I find out about stuff is like here.
Sure.
And then if I'm invested enough in the story and the artist, like then I'll come like meet in person. But that's like an observation I see. I will say one more thing. I think it's like, to me, all of this, it comes down to the artists themselves. And like, if there's artists here, like don't be afraid to like your audience, they're investing in you. Like your work is the reflection really in you, but like people really want to follow you and get invested in your story and your personality. So like, don't be afraid to display that, you know, as you're performing your work.
Yeah, story is definitely, it's always been that connecting fiber. And you're probably right, probably even more so now than it's ever been. Thank you so much for all the comments. Thanks for
let's give him a big round of applause. And Andy, one last comment when the gentleman spoke about movies in the 80s. Do you want to go back a few decades before 70s?
I won't say how far back.
Right. I won't either. All right, thank you so much, Andy. Entrepreneur number two is John Trey Williams. He's with the Central Pennsylvania Film Commission. Let's give him a big warm welcome.
Hello, everybody. So my name is John Trey Williams, and I feel more comfortable like this. I'm sorry. My name is John Trey Williams, and I'm the Central Pennsylvania Film Commissioner. I'll give you a little bit of backstory how I got here. I was born and raised in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I'm a product of the arts myself. My background is in film and production. As a kid, I used to make movies at home on my dad's camcorder. We made like 007, Mission Impossible, things like that. And decided to get into arts school when I was in high school. And the issue was 2 years into high school, the arts programming was taken away from me, swept up from under me. So I actually did my first year as a visual artist in a magnet program. In my second year, I tried out acting. I did so good at that at least before the school was taken away, my acting teacher told me, hey, you should really try out for the Pennsylvania Governor's School of the Arts, Governor's School. So I tried it, and I made it. And I got to see and experience artists from all across the state, and I just really, really fell in love with theater. One of the things I did there is the remaining 2 years of school, what I did was I started producing plays. And I said, if we're not going to have an opportunity to have this magnet program, maybe we can make our own shows. And that grew from 1 to 6 plays that I produced before I left school. I went off to college at University of the Arts in Philadelphia. And when I finished there, I moved back to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I started producing the plays again, this time in larger venues, Scottish Rite, the Forum, Whitaker Center. And along that journey, I met a gentleman, the late Michael K. Williams. And Michael K. Williams at the time was playing on a show called The Wire. And he played a character called Omar who was getting a lot of attention. And I had just dove into doing my first independent film project, and we were building a relationship, and he volunteered to be a part of that project. That took me from a local filmmaker to, hey, you should bring this film project to Los Angeles. And I went to actually live with him in Los Angeles for a month and decided to stay. When I was there, I started to see the film industry in a different way, and at a light that I had never seen. I started to see all these jobs and all these positions, hundreds of people on set. I started working at studios, worked for Disney on a show called Corey in the House, and started to, the film industry, as you guys are talking, we're talking around the 2005 area, it started to shift. And the shift that was happening was that film was leaving California and New York. Georgia wasn't Georgia yet, but things started to arrive by way of a tax credit. So states started incentivizing filmmakers and production companies to come to their state by offering them rebates and tax credits. And then I noticed that Pennsylvania was one of those states that was offering the tax credit. I also noticed that the gap was that there were no projects in the times that I remember, because I grew up in the time in the 80s, 90s, when it felt like we couldn't miss with projects like Lucky Numbers and Girl Interrupted, Distinguished Gentlemen. It just felt like, for some reason, Central PA was just this magnet to filmmaking. Well, what shifted was, that was when filmmaking was location-based. Now it's not that locations don't matter, it's about the tax credit. Where can you go that we can save $1? So I got this bright idea of starting a nonprofit. Right? And the nonprofit that I established is called FACTS, Film, Arts, Culture, Tourism Specialists. And very simply put, we fortify community and economic development through film. Because here's the thing that I noticed. Again, coming from the education space, when I moved back to Pennsylvania, I actually became a teacher. And I taught in the Harrisburg School District for many years. Again, arts companies would come, they would go, they would lose funding. You know, it was just like a revolving door. And I was like, there has to be a way to kind of solve that. Well, what I noticed when I was coming up in the 90s, when they took away that arts program, they replaced it in the same space. They replaced the art school with a math science school, because the money was behind math, science, and education. Well, then the acronym for math science moved to STEM. Then money started following STEM. If you're STEM, it wasn't just about math science. Now we're going to include science and technology. Then it was STEAM. I was like, yes, finally, there's a place for the arts, right? And as long as the arts could rest alongside of the other acronyms, it was getting the attention that it deserved in the first place. Well, that gave me the idea for FACTS. If we take arts and culture alone, people are like, arts and culture, you know. But when you add the film, you add something kind of attractive to it. And you also add an economic driver. So what we understand about FACTS is every letter, film, arts, culture, tourism, specialist, also comes with dollars. And we can kind of segment what we do from the film side of things as well as arts, culture, and tourism. Uh-oh, hold on. Hold on. Here we go. All right. So our mission is to create sustainable space for arts programming that can serve chronically under-resourced communities. And I say sustainable because, again, with arts programming, like we were just talking about it, money comes and goes. So our goal is that through FACTS, residents will have access to art, culture, film, video production, visual arts, in a way that strengthens visibility and exposure for local artists and aspiring creatives, providing opportunities for stakeholders, community capacity building, and cultivating economic development through skill-based opportunities. The way that we would really gain attention is through the Central Pennsylvania Film Commission. So the way we set up our nonprofit is that the Film Commission is actually a program of FACTS. So FACTS is the nonprofit. The Film Commission is the driver that kind of brings the attention of the film industry, in turn bringing finances, resources. This is how we're set up. Through our partnership with Dauphin County Economic Development, we were able to get accredited as a film commission for the Association of Film Commissioners International. So now we are internationally known and recognized as well as a film commission. Here's the way it kind of works. There's like the minor leagues, which FACT serves as an incubator, professional development, and where it's an extreme focus on the educational programming and programming and training, not just artists, but also small businesses so that they can take part in it, so that they can be valuable small business. We'll talk about why in just a minute. Certifications. We're working with colleges and programs now because the jobs that are involved with film, which is the biggest reason why we chose film, is because if I were to do a play, yeah, there might be various trades and components involved, but it's a limited scope of how many people can be involved. Literally, hundreds of people are involved, thousands sometimes, depending on if it's a Marvel project, of just employees and as well as small businesses for every film project. So we want to help develop businesses to be prepared and be a part of that. From a major league perspective, the Film Commission attracts major motion pictures and film, creates jobs, and builds industry. Well, the point of connection for every major motion picture is always going to be a film commission when they're looking to make a movie, because they don't want to make 1,000 calls when they're trying to go to a place they've never been before and have a project. They want to know who's the guy or where's the company that knows everybody, and you be my concierge and help me find them. And Philly and Pittsburgh have very extremely successful film offices in Pennsylvania that already do that for the major motion picture industry. One thing that I learned along our journey is that other emerging film commissions, like in Georgia, had an extreme focus on how to build capacity. In other words, Georgia didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, look at all these people who come in here to film a movie, right? They were very intentional about how they did that and building their workforce, down to craft services and things like that. They say, hey, you're a baker. We have training for you to learn how to upskill or how to transfer that skill onto set. They would do the same thing for electricians, carpenters, plumbers. Do the same thing for police and fire, because just because they know how to respond to a fire or a car accident doesn't mean they know how, gun safety, pyrotechnics, and things like that. So they were being front runners on training the community on how to do that. Well, we established journeyman programming through our Direct Connect program that gets beginners, production assistants, gets people on set so they can experience things, and then kind of explore more about what this whole process and industry is all about. We also last year established our trade-off program, which is trade offering a future in film, because a lot of people don't understand that trade is the backbone of how all of this works. I mean, it's you can go on a stage and try to speak if you want to. It's a trade that makes your mic work. It's a trade that sets the lighting. It's a trade that built the set. I mean, it really is the backbone behind it. So your carpenters, your electricians, your plumbers, we're working on how to upskill that, but also working with career pathway pipelines with different colleges and high school programs as well, and how to connect the dots. So again, the mission of the PA Film Commission, Central PA Film Commission, is to really draw film and television production into this region. Because when production comes, they're not bringing the Army. They're looking for the people who are already there to do the work. That's where the economics comes from, because they're bringing lots of dollars when they come. Currently, this is our team, who is actually currently volunteer staff, but all is just great to have them because they're all extremely competent and well-versed at what they do. And right now, they're excited about this opportunity. Years down the line, we want to get funding so that we can continue to pay, or not continue, we can pay people what they're worth. I mean, these guys are heavy hitters. So our production liaison is actually my wife, who comes from Los Angeles. I met her there. She was already working in the industry, was already really good at coordinating between Hollywood and events and things like that. Locations manager, 30 plus years in SAG, but well-versed in Central PA locations. Physical production, Angie Smith, her company work in parallel with NFL Films and Hershey as well. Smith Communications worked alongside Xfinity as well for many years. And Ryan Shank, our community engagement. Heavy hitter in the film industry even here. He's here, he runs the Red Rose Film Festival, which is coming up in end of October. Our target market is major motion pictures, industry TV, and commercial, mainly because that's where a lot of the money is. That's where a lot of the money is. But also, the target market number 2, there is still, documentaries, reality TV, corporate, industrial. These kind of keep things moving and keep things going on. It keeps film happening. But target market number 1 is where there's millions and millions of dollars. I don't expect you to be able to see this from the back of the room, but if you can just see that there's a lot of words up there, all those words equal a job. And these are the supportive, these aren't even the direct jobs. These are supportive services that support filmmaking. So from accommodations from property management companies, realty, hotels, there's casting services, facilities, financial services, food services, legal services, medical care, other things, like I said, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, rental services, transportation services, travel services, and they all make a lot of money when film production comes. This is just, I don't expect you to see this, but this literally says on a high-end project, the project is going to bring to that area anywhere from $260,000 a day to $500,000 a day. On a higher range, and then it goes down. There's mid to low budget, and that's for like a major motion picture project, which is why we're targeting them. Now, here's where we get into the tax credit. This tax credit has been a thing, but over the last 10 years, that tax credit has mostly gone. I mean, you can't even say mostly. It's gone to Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, which means that for 10 years, it's at this point now over $600 million that has been distributed. Only 2% of that has been distributed outside of Philly and Pittsburgh. I'm not talking about Central PA. I'm talking about all the whole rest of the state. Only 2% has been distributed outside of there, which means that the reason that we want to do this is not because, hey, I'm going back to a heyday where they made a movie up the street from me and that was really cool. I mean, that's nice. Okay, fine. I'm talking about economic drivers. So when these movies happen in these places, that's where they're taking their money. So what we're establishing that we need help and momentum with is this opportunity zone. And language around that, it's a play on words. Opportunity zone is underserved area or room where there's opportunity to grow. T-zone is the area in the state that kind of falls between Philly and Pittsburgh. And we're pushing this not as a film program, but as a jobs program that fosters workforce development while bringing career pathway opportunities for underutilized film areas. So what's at stake? That means we have industry creation, we increase job opportunities, tourism dollars. People go where they make movies, and we're missing out on that. This is what the T-zone kind of looks like in terms of the red areas is where film production has happened heavily. And of course, you can see how much of the state doesn't get it. So the things that we're presenting, anybody has friends in politics or friends in high places, what we're pushing to legislators is not anything new. It's actually already done, which is, first of all, what we're experiencing is, I'll call it geographic DEI. So diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. It means that we're not getting access to these opportunities. So like with something even handicap, what I've heard along this way is, well, that's just the way it is. And I'm like, is that what we say to something that's not fair? That's just the way it is. So I'm not going to accept that's just the way it is as an answer for a way that right now is really an uphill climb in terms of getting ahead of the tax credits. We're proposing an additional 5 to 10% incentive for the opportunity zone, which is any of the area in the yellow side of the state, that we tell filmmakers, hey, instead of 25%, you'll get 30% if you shoot in any of the yellow area. This is not a new thing. Los Angeles does 5, or California does 5% if you shoot outside of Los Angeles. Why? Because they know everybody's going to go to Los Angeles if you let them. New York now does 10% for upstate and western New York because they know everyone's going to go to Manhattan. So in order to incentivize them to go other places, they give a 10% increase. This is what that looks like. Now look how much of the state. Now you can get 40% now if you shoot. Now they're thinking, maybe I will film in Albany. Didn't think about it before, but for a 40% return, yeah, I'll try it out. Jay Rowe, executive at HBO, is someone that I've been able to establish a relationship with since 2016. He says our direct issue is going to be just that Pittsburgh and Philly are so far ahead in what they're doing. So A, establishing a relationship with them, but B, establish the tourism aspect of what it is that we're doing, and even forthright thinking about tourism, because there's this 40-40 rule that you can count on 40% increase in tourism when film production takes place. You film something right here in a coffee shop and everybody drives by and says, I mean, think about Cheers. When I went to Boston, I wanted to visit Cheers because I grew up watching it on TV. And 40% of tourism locations have experienced film production, or 40% of tourism in locations that have experienced film production can be attributed to the film. So they noticed this with Game of Thrones. When they brought Game of Thrones to Ireland, how much tourism increased and how many people were coming to places where they filmed. And also, the success of that they had with Game of Thrones, they knew to duplicate with a show called The Last of Us, which currently takes place in Canada. Well, in Canada, they were being proactive. They were literally writing scenes in the script because they knew they were writing in certain places so that people could visit those areas. And they had a whole tourism plan about how to get people to visit. And there's certain things that they won't take down because they want people to visit based on the success of the show. This October, we have Mike Fantasia, who's will be coming into town. And I met Mike last June in a conference where he was talking about how he established locations for Top Gun Maverick. And he said it was his hardest project because he had to establish locations for land, sea, and air. And then he retired after that. Well, at that point, during COVID, like you guys were saying, Maverick hit over $1 billion. So there were no issues with people paying to go see any movies during that time. Mike retired. He saw me at this event. I had a tag on my coat that said Dauphin County. He said, "Wait, I know where that's at." I said, "Well, how do you know that?" He said, "It's in Harrisburg." I said, "Well, you almost got it right." He said, "We filmed Girl Interrupted there." I said, "Man, yeah, you did." And he proceeded to tell me how wonderful this place was. He said, "Man, you know, everything we needed was there. 10 miles on one side of the river, we can get this. 10 miles on the other side of a river, we can get that." And I said, "Man, well, okay, well, what about crew and production crew? Was that hard to get?" He said, "You guys had some, but we were able to pull production crew from Philly. We pulled some from Pittsburgh." I said, "Was that expensive?" He said, "No, it wasn't that bad. We gave per diem, and it was fine." I could have screamed because this man was saying my exact narrative for why this place is valuable when we shortchange ourselves. I'm not out here just beating the pavement because I think this is a cool idea. I'm telling you, this is a sleeping giant, and I had to be very careful about even how to create this because I knew if someone got ahead of it before me, you know, it was over, just like any other business idea. But so everything I'm saying is extremely practical. It's not based on emotion. And Mike agreed. I said, "Will you go back to my hometown and tell them everything you just told me?" He said, "I would absolutely do that." So now what we're doing is we're having an event this October 20th. We're inviting Mike. We're actually inviting the film commissioner for the state of Texas as well, who I met in Bogota, oddly. And she saw my tag that said Central Pennsylvania Film Commission. And she said, "You got to be kidding me. I'm from Lancaster." I said, "Will you come to my hometown and talk to my hometown about how great this place is?" Since then, that was in October, she came home to visit her parents. We met in Hershey. And she said, "John Trey, if Lancaster would have been like this before I moved to Texas, I wouldn't have moved." She was like, "You guys are going to kick bleepity bleep." And I said, "Wow, I want you need to tell people that, you know." Now she's been successful at raising the tax credit from 45 million to 200 million. All right, for the state of Texas. She's right in Austin, South by Southwest. I mean, she really knows what she's talking about and has been a huge advocate for this. Now you're talking about a guy. I just want to put this in perspective. He retired in Top Gun Maverick. Girl Interrupting was in like the year 2000. So 22 years later, this guy remembers this place like it was yesterday. None of these movies happened before that. So he was still excited about this place. My goal is to charge our own community with the understanding and education of who we are and what we can do so that we can realize collectively when we come together with all of these superpowers, there's really nothing that can stop us. We don't need to try to be Philly. We don't need to try to be Pittsburgh. If we just be who we are, if we be our quaint bed and breakfast the way that we are, it will be a very special thing. It is special, not will be. It is special to the film industry. my issue here and question and answer is, as we move towards sustainability for the actual film commission, I realize every day that I've created a great monster, but a two-headed monster that both babies need to eat. We need to feed the baby that is growing the industry and professional development, and we need to feed the baby that's bringing film projects and production here. Oddly enough, the thing that people think, well, how are you going to communicate with film and production studios? I'll call them up. That's where we're at now. All right. So whether or not it be first name basis with location managers or the production team that's responsible for where productions go, I can talk to them. That's not the issue. The issue is when they come or when they're trying to vow for space to come here. Literally, I'm not lying to you. I was called this October to go to Universal Studios because they're interested in bringing a series to Harrisburg. They called me and I felt like my palms were going to sweat. There were 10 executives sitting around. All of them were showrunners. And you know what I had to dispel? They thought that Lancaster, they were like, well, Lancaster, what if we're not filming anything that's Amish? I said, no, you can't. I said, have you ever heard of Rocklittits? Oh, yeah. Now, everybody had heard of Rocklittits. I said, that's in Lancaster. And they were like, man, they're kicking butt over there doing that. And I was like, yeah, that's okay. Now, we have 2 accredited sound stages. There's 10 in the state of Pennsylvania where you can get an increase of 5% if you film in those stages. 2 of them are in Lancaster. I'm like, you guys need to know that. So it's not without trying. Amazon, same thing. Amazon, and we're currently working on programming right now through the Direct Connect program. The issue is, prior to these films and productions getting here, sustainability of funding and programming, access to grants, things like that, so that we can keep everything fed and keep everything going. And I would love to hear any questions as well as any solutions surrounding that. Yeah.
First, let's give him a round of applause. Who's going to grab it first?
I just want to say, friends, this is amazing.
Thank you.
What you have constructed here, what you've been working on over these last several years, months, especially since the passing of your dear friend, he'll be so proud of you. I just want to say that.
Come on, don't do that.
I know, but it's just, you have brought a vision to life, and you are so good at that. So first, just thank you for that.
Thank you.
Second,
Thank you.
rest in peace, Michael K. Williams. Second, I have 2 questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
What is your do you have an ambassador program for FACS? I know the answer. I'm just asking out loud.
When you say ambassador program, do you mean? Tell me what you mean. Ma'am.
So, yep, I am thinking along of the lines of your entire presentation. There are so many people who don't know what Central PA has to offer. So part of you've got your 2-headed monster, and on the side of training and education and professional development and all those other pieces, who are we training up to talk the way you do about Central PA? That's my first question.
Yeah. So, thank you for that. So the way that first we had to get facts off the ground, we didn't even talk about the Film Commission until September 29th. So the Film Commission hasn't existed for a year yet. September 29th would be a year we got our accreditation. So we had to build the nonprofit first. When we got people on our team, I'll be quite honest with you. I wanted people on the board who are passionate about the mission. Because if I would have led with the Film Commission, they'd have been passionate about that. So we didn't want the mission of FACS, which is to create sustainable programming for under-resourced communities, to go away. Because that's why we exist. The Film Commission is just another aspect of that. So the board members we had on actually didn't know much about film. And as we moved ahead, and as so much of the work I was doing myself, we were coming up to a another fiscal year of a lot of people being on the board. And I said, all right, everyone on here is good at something. You're going to be a director of that thing that you're good at. So then we established a director of fundraising. We established a director of workforce development. There's a director of, Ryan Shank is director of career pathways. His specialty is the bridging, like, first of all, through the Red Rose Film Festival, he has a similar story to me, moving to Los Angeles, coming back here, living in Lancaster, knows all the production companies around here. But he also is versed in speaking with schools and educators and things like that. So when we brought him on, it was very intentional. And since then, we've been speaking to Central Penn College about how we can create a certification program that people can take online, passively and get a certificate. That certificate would represent soft skills for like production assistants and leadership and things like that, where that would let the production company know that I'm not just getting a guy that wants to work. They know how to do a thing, but they don't have to go to Central Penn for 11 months to do that. So we're trying to work that out with other schools as well. HU, Hack is interested, Millersville is interested, where we can do that. And Ryan's the guy going out there, and he understands. He could have gave this presentation today. Yeah.
And then my second question is, it sounds like your two-headed monster, one side is going to be sustained by this funding that is going to be coming, that we can get in the state, and the other side, it sounds very, it could be grant funded, a lot of it. So what is your grant structure looking like for the organization?
Well, my Achilles heel always has been grants. I could wake up in the morning and give you a great idea and then not know how to access the funding or the grant or how to do it. And my first Keystone Merge event, which took place at Ancarcher on the riverfront, that was my first one. And the gentleman that was lead, I can't remember, he works with Jamar on the CIE, I just can't remember his name. But he was like, just move forward with your idea, because I was scared to start a nonprofit. And he was like, money comes to good ideas. And I was like, well, I'm just going to keep pushing this good idea, and someday some money's going to come along. And now more people have come along that can help handle the capacity and money that come in. Since then, we've structured, like in terms of what DUNS and SAMS.gov, so we can get in line in that way, so we can get federal grants and financing. So I need help accessing that type of funding and sustainable funding, money that can go towards staffing, because a lot of the grants that we've been is for like a thing or a program or something. So we need unrestricted grants or grants that we are allowed to use for staff to staff these brilliant people that we can't pay.
I will say one thing about structuring. Oh, sorry. I will say one thing in response to that around structuring around staff that a very brilliant woman named Una Martone told me from Leadership Harrisburg. She said, don't write a staff line, write a community engagement line, write a business development line, write a donor development line, write those kinds of lines into your grants so it doesn't look like you're spending it all on administration, because that's one thing that people hate right now in grant writing. They hate the words administration. They hate the words, right. They don't want to pay staff as a bulk item. They want to pay staff to do it for these particular, how much time is your staff spending on community engagement? How much time is your staff spending for you, for example, on education, developing a program with Central Penn that could be a dollar match grant, right? So these kinds of kind of just retooling how we understand how the grants language needs to be will position you for success.
So thank you for that. Okay.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I need help from you. But I have some ideas that I know grant take a long time, and it is almost like you need a professional person to write that, and who going to pay that, who can motivate doing just grant writing. So
Yes.
it's almost like the chicken or the egg, who's
Yes.
first,
You're
right?
right.
So I think what you're doing is very impactful, very very like good for our community, right? What you did, it should be all recorded, just like a natural, and put on YouTube and do not YouTube. Yeah, YouTube also can donate, right? Ask people donations, $5, dollar, right? Or Facebook. This money comes like right away after you get that done. Raise some money for grant writer. Get your grant set, then you're paying some other people.
Yeah, no, thank you. I just spoke with our team actually today. We're putting together partnerships with different companies. I don't want to say any company's name or any schools, but between companies and schools where we would document a process. And like for instance, I've actually been contacted by like Hollywood Reporter, Variety Magazine. I will not put out an article yet because you can't bunt with something like that. You got to hit a home run. So we're working towards a home run, which is right down the lines of what you're just saying, which is how can we package this in documentary style? And we're filmmakers, right? So we got filmmakers to agree to be a part of this and create documentary, just what you just said. And another version of that, we want to create a almost like a short film, 2-3 minutes that shows our competency as well. Cutting edge, like what it is that we're capable of doing here in the sound stages, the amount of production crew that we have here, that'll show that. And there's another group of people from Altoona that's putting together a comprehensive video speaking towards the T-zone issue that's directly for legislators so that it can go in the room with them. That's what Texas did to go from 45 million to 200 million, and that messaging was for legislators. So those are 3 things that we're doing right now in addition to the October event. Now the October event, the reason I'm telling you about it is because we want to charge that room. We want to charge. I don't want to talk to another group of artists. I want to talk to legislators, House reps, tourism departments, schools, colleges. I want them all in a room to hear from this group of people and then charge them with that room and show that video to that room. And that'll be our launch for that project. And then we'll put it on air. That's what we're working towards, yeah.
If you need a videographer, I have a recommendation.
Thank you.
He's live in New York. He has a lot of year experience. He also worked in the White House for years.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give you a card and vice versa.
I just want to say I think what you're doing is awesome.
Thank you.
I really do. I think it's great, and I have to agree with them. I've worked in nonprofits, so I understand the grant writing part. And unfortunately, I had a director of a foundation to say, very frank, we don't want to pay for staff. We want to pay for the program itself, the materials for the program. But like she said, if you, so what we do with our grants is we make sure that our staff gets some pay out of that as well. We do it in percentages. And you put a percentage because, well, the program is not going to work if there's nobody to work the program, right? Somebody has to run it. If you could, there are professional grant writers. Some of them, and I can't tell you that I know who they are because, well, if I knew who they were, I would have made sure I found them. But there are some grant writers that will write the grant for you, and then once the grant has been approved, you get the funding. They get a percentage of it at that time, so you don't have to pay them up front.
Sure.
If you have somebody that can look into that and find some people like that, it would be great because a professional grant writer is going to get you that money. They're going to get you the money that you need. They're going to know where the grants are, and they'll know how to write it so that you and your staff are getting paid as well as, the items the program items that you need. But I literally just wanted to say that I think that this is great. And I'm a little on the selfish side. I was sitting here thinking about my son. He works, and also if you need a connection at Franklin and Marshall College here, and if you need another connection at Millersville, my daughter-in-law went there. She knows people. He works at Franklin and Marshall College. but he's also a photographer. So I was sitting here and I was like, I need to get this information for Christian because, and connect him. So I'll be asking for your card also.
Sure.
But I just want to say thank you for this presentation. This was good.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, hey.
Hey.
Okay, first of all, I'm your ambassador in York. So
Yes. Yes.
here we are. Cultural Alliance. Let's do it.
Yes.
I need information on your event. I don't have that yet. Maybe Kelly does. I don't know. But I'm going to need that. And and to get back, I'm just curious more about the funding piece of it. Where does the funding for the Philadelphia and Pittsburgh Film Commission come from? Is that public funding? Is it like tax dollars carved out of the budget in the counties that they're in, or state funding? Like, do you know where that, to pay the people who run those commissions, do you know where that comes from?
Not exactly, but it's a really good question. Yeah. And a really good question is because they alone, Philadelphia makes over $200,000 as a film commissioner, and then in Pittsburgh, Dawn makes over 150.
Like the people, that's their salaries?
Yeah, that's their salary. Damn. So, the actual nonprofit, Philly, Philly gets closer to $1 million is their last reporting, and then Pittsburgh is actually a little under that. Yeah. But these film offices have been around since the 80s, so they've actually been established offices.
Got it.
They've transferred from how they became like nonprofits, because I think they were like attached to government at one point, but I'm telling you, man, everywhere I go, they say their names first-hand basis. Oh yeah, Dawn. Oh yeah, Sharon. So it's not like the Philly film office. It's like
it's that person.
It's that person, and that's coming from any studio you want to talk to.
Which makes total sense in the art realm. It's all relationship based. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
I would just be very curious about that piece, right? Because it's interesting to me that you started as and we've talked about all of this before, but sure. That you started as a nonprofit first. It's just that the funding is so different, like the way that you then receive funds, right? So it's either like straight fundraising and grant writing. Also, if you need, I have some recommendations for grant writers if you need that.
Awesome.
There you go. All right. Great. There's some good ones. We have some good ones around.
How about answer to your question really fast?
Yes.
So how do they get paid?
Yes.
So in 2021, the Philly office at least, they did not get any government funding from federal, state, or city because of the pandemic. And so some of their monies come from this grant piece that we're talking about, which is federal, state, and city funding, all three levels. And they use it kind of like how I was talking about earlier to fund some of their educational, community outreach, community building, capacity building, ecosystem, but whatever it is, work. And then they get it looks like they get because I'm always gonna follow the money. They get a percentage from the films that come into the city. I'm sorry, to fund the commission if they are the ones who are successful in securing those films. If it's not like some other organization, that's what it looks like.
That makes total sense. I do think that that grant funding piece is going to be, it's because you need Kickstart money, right? Mm-hmm. And the way that this, if you'll allow me to keep waxing poetic, the way that this links also back to what Andy was talking about and Helen's comments also is that it's just startup money, right? Like it's artists in particular need someone to believe in the core of the value of their work, regardless of the financial kickback. Now you're also providing the financial kickback, the economic driver piece of it. But I think it's like there's literally, I'll speak for York in particular, there's a literal misunderstanding of the value of everything that you're talking about. We are so entrenched in like industry and manufacturing, and we have been for decades, that's our history, that it's very hard for people to turn their brains into, okay, something cultural has like this same amount of value over here. And it's a very large cultural shift that you're also addressing. So I think that, the seed funding to then, it's always about proving the model, like getting a little bit forward. So I think it's really that seed money the first time you get the thing in to then show what the impact then is and tracking all of that. We take a long time to change in this area, generally South Central Pennsylvania, if you haven't noticed. But you got us and we got your back, and let's just talk about how much more equitable operational funding should be generally across the board.
Thank you.
Oh, I should be more specific. I think it would be cool for young people if you create this fundraising just like in the Facebook. Now, I mean, you can do launch on October, but for this, you just say, hey, bring like a Hollywood film production to Lancaster to meet a Hollywood star. What do you think? Support us, donate $5. People will do that.
Mm-hmm.
I really loved what Rito was saying about like the seeds that are being planted right now, because I'm sure you're having like these major opportunities. So the thrill is like, let's go. But I also was just thinking about like the smaller pieces. And I'm not sure too if like AJ from York already reached out to you about the Bell Center, but I know there are a lot of colleges and art organizations in our city, at least, that are looking for connection ramps for students who are in this industry, or at least in industries close to it. Is summer internships or something similar to that a part of the model, or is it just like you're ready to work and this is a full-time job?
No. It certainly is. So the issue with what you're saying is we literally like kind of have to scale in terms of like the barrier to entry, because the like so many people being interested that we wouldn't have capacity to kind of serve that. So what I have done, very similar to like in York, what's the name of the organization? Like the Pennsylvania Council of the Arts funds? What is that called?
The organization that the PCA funds?
Or because you're a delegation, what is that delegation called?
We don't use the word delegation.
Oh. Well, but the Council of the Arts has partner.
PCA partner.
All right. Yeah, they're the partner in York. So establish relationships with York, the partner in Lancaster, partner in Harrisburg, so that we can have relationships with artists and residents, so that we can have the capacity to deal with the programming in those areas. We're not trying to be all things. We really want to be an antenna and be attracted to the funding. We are working on getting our education improvement tax credit, EITC, attached to us so we can get businesses to pour in that would get a higher percentage return than a straight nonprofit, so that we can fund programs like that. And we can be decision makers on where programs go and kind of drive that behavior. Hey, if your program is bridging underserved communities and creating a pathway to these projects, we want to fund that project. So, yeah, we see that there's opportunities in Lancaster. Is that going into the Lancaster Public Schools? Is it happening in York Public Schools? Is it happening in Harrisburg Public Schools? And how do we build bridges in those areas as well? We're very interested. We can't do that alone. We have to go to the places where that's happening and make sure that they get the support to foster their community. That's what we're interested in.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if it's like organizations and schools that would be interested in taking ownership, those are the people that you want to be introduced to.
That is correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
All right, this has been one of the most dynamic give and takes of a Keystone Merge for quite some time. Small group, but awesome give and take. So let's give a round of applause both to Andy and big thanks to our community partners for all the support, including Next Gen Innovation Committee. And if you know of any entrepreneurs, send them our way. If they want to present, send them to the website. We'll be happy to get them engaged. And also, as we were talking about community and getting people to reach out, bring people to the Keystone Merge event. We will be skipping next month, but we will see you in October. We'll be in York. And a last plug, Net Worth Summit coming up, Harrisburg University, August 10th. Take a look at that. And with that, I want to thank all of you. Thank the Candy Factory for having us here. And we'll see you in 2 months. Eat some food, have a drink. Nobody leaves without it. Thank you.